Hey girl, Marissa here. You are listening to the Codependent Dummy podcast. As a young woman, you have been raised, reinforced, and rewarded for putting the needs of others above your own. Now, in your 20s, you're finding yourself exhausted, exasperated, and enveloped in shit relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. Codependency is a way of being where we put the feelings, wants, and needs of others above our own in an unconscious attempt to meet our own feelings, wants, and needs. Sorry to break it to you, sis, but that is not sustainable. This podcast is to help you undo all that so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. Let's get to it. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Codependent Dummy podcast. Today, I'm with Colleen Greco. Colleen is a joyologist, helping people feel amazing in their own skin and remove limiting beliefs so they're able to maximize their full potential. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm excited for our discussion.
Awesome. All right. So I have the typical 2 questions, Colleen. We'll start with these. First and foremost, how do you conceptualize codependency?
Ooh, I like that you're starting heavy. So codependency to me is more of a like needing someone or something versus wanting someone or something. So a codependent relationship, I'll take, myself, I'm married, needing my husband in order to do something versus wanting to spend the quality time with him.
Right. Needing someone or something versus wanting someone or something.
And you can relate that to anything. It can be food. So, you have a codependency on food, which is, potentially why you're in a weight loss scenario versus wanting food because you're hungry.
Right.
Needing it to self-soothe, maybe.
Right.
So yeah, I could draw many parallels to that. Unfortunately, personally, and then professionally, I could definitely share a few as well.
Right. Yeah, no, I do appreciate this distinction. And right, like in the word in and of itself, like dependent. Yeah, I think at my most codependent, yeah, I just really needed my, the boyfriend who I was with at the time to respond, behave, treat me a certain way. Of course, I maybe wanted that too, but I needed it. And if I didn't get it, I was completely, yeah, unable to self-soothe or um, just, I don't know, really function until I got it. And then, yeah, if I didn't get it, that was just a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, and it ties in your ability to be self-sufficient, which isn't to say that you can't do things on your own, but maybe that
Right,
thing you felt like you couldn't.
right.
And so rather than that person adding value to the experience, like maybe the experience wouldn't happen without them.
Yeah. And second question of our typical 2. Is there a codependent experience or relationship from your own life that you can share with us?
Well, do you have like 6 or 7 days? Because I could go through quite a few. Yeah, I mean, I think we all do, and I think it generally happens pretty oh geez, what's the word? Like innocently, where, for example, I never really had a weight problem. Looking back, okay, at the time I thought I did, but looking back, it's like, who are you kidding, right? But when things started to become really difficult, and I talk a lot about in in other show appearances I've had that when my son was 10, he attempted suicide. So as you might imagine, I ate and drank my way up to weights that I hadn't seen since my pregnancies. I was dependent upon alcohol and food to numb the feelings I was having as my world was falling apart. And so while I would I wouldn't characterize my behavior as maybe being an alcoholic or a food addict, I definitely disrespected my relationship with both of them. And so I felt like there was a codependency there because I felt like anytime I felt triggered or like that pressure where like you have that tightness in your chest and you can't breathe, I was like, I should just grab a beer. It'll just be so much better after I have that one beer. And it's like, that is not healthy behavior at all. But at the time it felt justifiable because I was trying to rebuild my family.
Right.
So that's certainly one example. And I think, again, it started off innocently where I just thought I was buying myself some time, buying myself some, like the ability to breathe that I didn't have,
right.
calming all of the stories that were going around in my head about, is he safe? Will he do it again? Will, all of these things. What about the families that were involved? Because he was being bullied. What about the bully? Oh, if I see him, and all these stories would go around and around. So the food and alcohol just honestly helped to quiet that as I was trying to heal. So what started off relatively innocent became, I don't know the right word, maybe dysfunctional. It definitely wasn't a healthy relationship anymore. And as a result, it had to go. So I gave up alcohol because of that. And I would say that is one or two really good examples of codependency in my world. But the irony is that it put me on this path to help other people so they don't have to go to the depths that I went through to get help. So now I help other people so that they don't have to feel so isolated and alone.
Right. Have you found yourself transferring that codependency to the people you work with? Or do you sense like giving up the alcohol, improving yourself? Like, because it sometimes I feel like in my story, in my experience, like it was like whack-a-mole. So I wouldn't be codependent here anymore, but then it might pop up somewhere else. And being a mental health therapist, yeah, I wasn't codependent on my alcoholic ex-boyfriends. And then, okay, I wasn't codependent with my super dysfunctional girlfriends who I would rescue and save. But then now I'm a therapist, super worried and overinvested in my patients' lives. So yeah, what was that process, or have you been codependent like in helping others?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause I didn't even realize I was until I sat back and said, what are you doing? I would drive. So I coach people all over the world, right? Like it doesn't matter where they live, but
right.
Because a lot of people who know you, they want to work with you. And so some of them were local. Well, one of them lived about 30 minutes away, and I brought a protein supplement over to her house so she could try it. Like, why didn't I just tell her to go to the store? I was just trying to be nice. I had some extra. Why not? I'm in the mood for a drive. And I was like, that is the dumbest, most dysfunctional thing. And it was really kind of me, but it was a codependency. And I didn't realize that until I dug further into my healing. So once things were up and running with my business, that was kind of becoming like, I don't want to say routine because there is no client that is like another, but I had a process in place and what have you. And then it became time to kind of look at, like, where are the boundaries? I can't want this more than they do.
Right.
And I have to respect, what they're paying for, what my time is worth, and really what is just downright crazy. Why did I drive 30 minutes to her house? I think it was like 8 o'clock in the morning too, when I did it. And I thought nothing of it at the time. The client needs it. So I'll just do it. That's classic.
Right. And it's 30 minutes there and 30 minutes back. So it's really, it's an hour, your whole hour for here's this protein supplement.
Yeah. And by the way, she didn't even last the full 6 months. So I lost money on her and time.
Yeah.
So, but in retrospect, I know why I did it. I was running from things that were going on at home that, I was healing myself, healing my family, but I work here, I live here, I do everything here. And so the opportunity to escape and go help somebody else, okay, I'll do that.
Right.
But no, I don't do that anymore.
Right.
If you want it, you can come get it, but I'm not going to you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. And let's focus on some of your specialties. So first and foremost, mindset. What do you sense are common self-defeating thoughts of codependence? We'll start with that. What are common self-defeating thoughts of codependence?
Oh, I would say I'm not good enough is number one, at least that I come across. Now, globally ranked, I have no idea, but what I come across, I'm not good enough is absolutely number one. And it was my number one. Used to.
Right.
But yeah, I think a lot of times when clients come to me, it's always like they look for a way to justify it that doesn't make it about them. Like, I'm going to do this so that my kids have a better role model, or I'll do this so my spouse thinks I'm more attractive.
Right.
And sometimes I play along with that. Sometimes I'm like, okay, go with that, because that gets you in and starting the process. But very quickly I move them to, it's about you. And when you are operating at like maximum capacity and your cup is full, you're giving a better product out to those you love. And that's because we're prioritizing you first. So like, you have to come first. This world does not operate with you at any other position than number one. It just doesn't work. It falls apart. And that's why we're working together, because you have put yourself last. And I think working moms, especially, at least with the clients I've worked with, again, I don't know globally if this is like a fair a fair generalization, but with the women that I've worked with, working moms are the absolute worst at putting themselves first, because they have like the job outside the home, the job inside the home, the job as a wife, a mother, a sister, an aunt, whatever. And then obviously stay-at-home moms are really, really bad at it too, because they never get like time off.
Right.
At least working moms get to change hats. So it's, getting them to, make that shift. It's almost like it takes me back to the days of when my kids were learning how to walk. And it's so exciting to see them like see their value sometimes for the first time in their life.
Right.
It's amazing.
So I'm not good enough. Self-defeating thought number one in your observations of codependence. Another common self-defeating thought is, I will do this for kids, spouse, so it's self-defeating because
it's like, how do we
Like they're not
articulate that?
worthy. It's
Right.
they're not worthy of the investment, but the kids are.
Right.
I can justify this because I'm doing it for my kids, but I'd never do this for myself.
Right.
I hear that one all the time.
Other self-defeating thoughts of codependence that you've heard?
So a lot of what I encounter in my mindset practices around like dreams. So you have this dream of becoming whatever. Well, that's just a dream though. That's not something I could ever possibly, you know, strive for. It's almost like when we got married or had kids or both, that we kind of like surrendered the right to go after our dreams. So I don't know how I would like categorize that into 3 words or less, but it's something about like no longer being worthy because your life isn't your own.
Right.
Your life also belongs to your spouse and your kids and your, extended family, which is totally untrue. Because you have that dream, that means it's out there for you and you simply need to welcome it in. It's achievable because you have it as a dream. And people don't make that connection. They think it's just like this wild idea they had. No, it was implanted in you. Now you need to bring it in.
Right.
And I've seen that, I can't even tell you how many times. And when we start to make that mindset shift, they start to see what's possible. Their whole world shifts.
Yeah. Well, my next question, which you're already alluding to, so how do you suggest one can become aware of their self-defeating thoughts in hopes they can start to transform them? How can they start
The first
to be
thing I
aware?
recommend is that they start to journal. And I will say I am a reformed anti-journaler. I used to hate journaling. Journaling is like not worth my time. That was always my thought process until this trauma happened.
Yeah.
I know it's crazy I ever thought that, but
well, no, what was it? Or what do you sense it was? Like it was like self-indulgent or repetitive? You're just reporting your day and you already had your day.
I think I just didn't understand the value. Like I always had a really high stress career that would cause me to work, 25 hours in a 24-hour day. So I don't have the time. In that phrase, I don't have the time, another self-defeating thought. You do have the time. You have the exact same number of seconds in a day that I do. You're choosing to spend yours this way, where I'm choosing to spend mine this way. And so when I started to discover that with journaling, that journaling was the fastest way to the truth, right? Because we all tell ourselves stories, but they're never the complete truth.
Right.
The ego and other things get in the way. But journaling is the fastest way to the truth. And when I started that and I realized the power of it, like I can't stop. I love it. And it's incredibly healing.
Yeah. You're reminding me, I think it was sometime in November or December. I journal. I'm a pretty avid journaler. But it's seasonal. Sometimes I have my spring of journaling and it's very insightful and compassionate and very self-aware. And other times it's my winter and it is. I'm just reporting what I did. I'm planning my day. But yeah, I think it was sometime in November or December. I started a prompt. I don't know where it came from, but I said, I don't want to acknowledge that. And I started acknowledging some things that I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. And like you said, journaling is the fastest way to truth. Yeah, I'm in therapy. I go on walks with friends. I have other outlets to express and process emotion. But yeah, no one had been like, what are you not wanting to acknowledge recently?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it was so, so helpful.
And it's
So yeah.
amazing too, because you'll start to write something, and again, it's like it's the subconscious that is telling you that isn't true, and you'll be like, no, that's not right. And then you get it over to another part of the issue and you're like, no, that doesn't fit right either. Okay, yeah, that one's right. And then you can really write it out, and then once you can identify it, you can let it go.
Yeah.
And that is extremely powerful.
Mm-hmm. So you start with journaling. That's one way to become aware of self-defeating thoughts. Any other, suggestions you have for becoming aware of them?
Yeah, and I'm, without saying it, I'm kind of articulating the SNAP method, which is my method for helping my clients. But one of the things I tell people is there is always a visceral response when you get that self-defeating thought. Like for me, it's right in my throat. I feel like I have that lump in my throat that I can't possibly swallow through. Some people break out into a sweat. Some start to shake. Everybody kind of has a different visceral reaction, but notice that visceral reaction. Notice when that term or phrase or story shows up, what happens to you? Your heart starts to race. And so that's when you start to record, like, what was the story? Who was there? How were you feeling? What did you hear versus what they said? And that's when you can start to look at your journal entry and separate the facts from the emotions, right? There's the facts that certain things were said, but the emotion is like, it made me feel this way. And that's really important. I can remember my husband and I had a situation, this is like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, where I was running late coming home from the gym, and he always went back about 15 minutes before I did to get the morning started with the kids. And he called because I was running late. I had run into a friend. I didn't know he needed to be to work early that day. So he was like, where are you? I'm running late. I'm so stressed out. The kids are all upset and everything. And I just like kind of blew up and said, I can never do anything right. And that story, I can never do anything right, sat with me that entire day. It was on repeat. Everything I then did wrong that day kind of like resurfaced the story. And I took myself for a walk and I was like, let's just look at this. Is it really accurate that I can never do anything right? Can we look at like all the things I did today? Like I went to the gym, I took a shower, the kids are still alive, all these things that are factually correct. And now let's look at all the things I did wrong. And the only one I came up with was that I didn't call him. Now, by the way, he could have told me he needed to be to work early that day. That would have been helpful too, but not splitting hairs here. But factually, I did one thing wrong. And on the other side, I did, I don't know, it was like 60 or 70 things right. So I had to believe that the I could never do anything right story wasn't true. I had to tell myself a different story. And that's how you begin to reprogram the ego. And it's really powerful. And some of those stories may take a bit of time to reprogram. And then some it's on your first try. But that's how you begin to heal, and you open up space for all this abundance that's waiting for you.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're skipping ahead to one of my questions.
I get excited. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm curious, what is the SNAP method and how might it be used by those recovering from codependency?
Yeah. So the SNAP method, SNAP is an acronym, and it's how you respond to these limiting beliefs and these stories that make us feel less than. And then also how you let the stories go, which is the ultimate goal. So S stands for stop. So when that trigger happens, generally people run to food or alcohol or gambling or whatever they generally run to self-soothe and kind of numb the pain. But S stands for stop. You don't go any further. You allow that trigger to come and just kind of wash over you. You're in it, right? Like this is time to just like sit in it. N stands for notice. And so this is where we bring the journal out. We start to record everything the way that we believe it to be, so that I can never do anything right story. That's the story I write down. That is the truth as I know it. I write down the visceral reactions I'm having. Do I have that lump in my throat? Is my heart racing? All of the physical reactions that I'm experiencing. And this isn't the time to judge it or correct it. You just let the pen flow. There's a psychological connection between your brain, your fingertips, the pen and the paper. And you can't break that. And you also, I should mention, can't really replicate it with your computer, which is why I tell people it's really important to physically write it. And then A stands for accept or analyze. And now this is the time when you review your entry and you separate facts from emotions. And with that information, you can then analyze the truth of the story. Is it true that I can never do anything right? No. I look at the facts. The facts tell me no. So I need to tell myself another story. The story is I do a lot of things right. And the freedom that you get from that, it's like a 50-pound weight being lifted off of your chest. And your body knows when you are out of alignment. And that's why you're getting that trigger. So it's really important to pay attention to it, because it's basically like ringing a bell saying, you have work to do on that story that was just told. And I'm trying to call your attention to it. And then the last step is P, which is practice gratitude. You want to thank the trigger for coming, because it's the body's way of telling you there's still work to do around that story you haven't completely healed. And that's probably my favorite part of the whole method, is that reminder, the practice gratitude step, because it's a reminder that I'm human and that I make mistakes. Big deal. Big deal that I didn't call. It was 10 minutes. Big deal. Like no one died. No one got fired. Everybody's okay. Right? So stop being so hard on yourself. And so I do a lot of work around, educating people on the power of grace. And if you actually gave yourself a little bit more grace every day, how balanced you would feel as you go through your day, because you realize the vast majority of things that you worry about are not that big of a deal. You're putting so much pressure on yourself that doesn't need to be there. And so how that relates to codependency too is, as you're looking at your relationships and you're thinking like that need, you can almost feel it again as that visceral reaction where you need that person. Like, especially after, COVID, I think a lot of us were pretty codependent on our families, didn't want to go anywhere alone because we didn't know how to socialize anymore. Right. So it's like, oh, I can't go unless my husband's going. It's like, no, go. What's the worst that could happen? And so, it takes time to break those habits, but it's the best methodology, not just because it found me, but because it has been proven, I don't know how many, over 400 or 500 times, 400 or 500 clients. I don't know how many times we've used it. I've used it with every single client I've ever worked with. And it's really effective. And it is, in my opinion, the path to freedom.
I can hear that. Okay. Another one of your specialties, joy, right? As a joyologist.
Yeah.
Calling codependence, I did write this, and this is my observation. I don't know if it's a global or generalization, but I sense codependents often lack joy in their lives. What happens to an individual when they neglect to have joy in their life in the short and long term?
That's a great question. I get the comment all the time, or I guess it's a question. What's the difference between joy and happiness? I'm like, well, that tells me that you've really never had joy then, if you think. So happiness to me is more the codependence side. That's like external validation. Like happiness is a response to something. Like I was hungry and you brought me my lunch and therefore I'm happy, right? Whereas joy is like, I can have joy right now. Earlier I was talking to you about my son's suicide attempt. Obviously a horrific time in our life, but I still found joy. I was able to go outside and have like an appreciation and like an inner peace. I guess joy to me is like an inner peace, like an inner knowing that I'm okay right now. It's like I look at the facts and I look at the fact that I have a roof over my head. I'm not cold. I have food in my stomach. This is everything. I have everything that I need, versus, happiness being more of like the codependency side, where it's like, well, I won't be happy until I make X amount, or I'll be happy when I get a certain thing, or when so-and-so gets home. And no, this is about like that inner peace, that inner knowing that you have everything you need now. And a lot of times I'll tell the story of my dogs. So I'm in Boston and it's winter, so it's cold, right? And so the other morning it was 19 degrees out when I was walking the dogs. Didn't want to be out there. Don't like the cold. But I can choose to focus on the fact that it's 19 degrees and I'm freezing, or I can choose to focus on the fact that my dogs are having a good time. They're being silly. They're chasing birds, looking for rabbits, all that stuff, and they're being cute. And that's fun for me. Like I enjoy that. And to me, it's like where attention goes, energy flows. So the more that I focus on the fact that I'm freezing, the more of that like scarcity and negativity I invite in to my life. Whereas the more I focus on, the beauty that's all around me, the more of that comes my way.
And what happens if we neglect to do that, short term and long term?
If we neglect to discover joy. So I think
like a practice, like practicing joy.
Yeah, because I think, you then look to those external factors to fill your cup when it's really best filled by you.
Right.
Number one, you get to control what, the input is, right? Somebody else is filling your cup. It's whatever they're filling it with. You can decide what you want to fill your cup with. When this first happened to us, I did a full cleanse of everything in my life. I was like, I looked at my relationships. I looked at my social media. I looked at my job. I quit my job and found my calling through this whole thing. But I looked at all the different inputs into my life and decided I get to say who gets my energy. Energy is currency to me. And so you only have like $100. You get to decide, who gets $1, who gets 10. Same with energy. I get to decide who gets my attention and who gets my energy. And it was a really inspiring but painful process, because I had to let go of relationships that no longer served me, that I felt bad about because I was a people pleaser also. But wow, did my world open up when I did that. And so there's no regrets about that whole process. But I think, what you lose by not doing that is like the art of the possible. When you actively seek joy, like this whole other world opens up to you that you couldn't have even conceived of.
Yeah. So this is a side question, given that we have a lot of people pleasers listening.
Yeah.
How did you break up with some friends and relationships? Right, no regrets now, but what was that like?
Well, you'd be surprised if you don't reach out how quiet it can get. So with, in the early days of the suicide attempt, I just was like, bye, checking out, and, didn't announce it, but my phone stopped ringing. And I realized how much of it was one-sided, that I had I forget what my in-laws used to call me, but it was something about, oh, I won't remember now, but it was like, you always like a project. I know they definitely said that. And I did. I had this one friend who was a single mom who, was a teacher, so she didn't have a big income, and but she wanted her son to look like everybody else and have all the clothes and everything. So he happened to be a year younger than my son, so he got all of our hand-me-downs, right? I loved that I could rescue her and do that for her. Another codependent tactic, right?
Right.
But when I needed help, she wasn't there. And I realized, wow, I have a lot of takers as friends. And if I ask for help, would they actually respond? And none of them did. And so it made it pretty easy for me to just stop connecting with them and being a little busy, or maybe some other time or whatever. And then, gradually it just goes away on its own.
Yeah. I think sometimes we get caught up in, well, first of all, like some of us think we have to have a conversation, which you don't have to have a conversation. Or I think too, it's similar to having a conversation, but we think we need to be upfront and assertive, right? Not a coward. So again, still the pressure to have this conversation. But yeah, thinking, I don't know, I think it's very relative to each relationship, and it potentially could be most ideal to just slowly decrease communication as and often as that's recommended. That could be it.
It's like letting the bonfire just go out on its own. With her in particular, she was helping me at an event, and she said my table needed a little bit more zhuzh. It just needed a little bit more of something. And her mother made a centerpiece of fake flowers so I could bring it event to event. And that was back in the summer of this year. And so for those listening, it's now January and I still don't have it. And she lives a mile away. That spoke volumes to me, that she couldn't even bring that over to me. And I had realized by that point that was a one-way street. And I thought, I'm not going to ask about that centerpiece. I'm just going to see what happens. She knows the dates of my events. I'll see what happens. And here we are in January, and I still don't have it. I was like, that's all I need to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely have lost friendships that were very codependent. And yeah, some of them, I mean, thankfully I've heard of other codependents. There was a big blow up because there was so much resentment on one side. And that's how it ended. But yeah, I really think a lot of them have just been this slow decrease in communication, and then and now we're no longer friends. And yeah, I think, yeah, some people would say that again, it wasn't clear enough, or I should have said something, and that's not necessarily universal or true.
Yeah. And truthfully, I could have called her and said, hey, how come you won't help me? But I really don't want to know the answer, because with all the help I've given her, I did feel like it was this unspoken thing where, of course, if I called, especially if it was the one time I've called in 7 years for help, I do just expect the help. But that small issue of the centerpiece just showed me everything.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, wow, you're only a mile away and you couldn't just drop it off. You're a teacher. Like you're off in the summer. What else are you doing? But it's okay. You learn from it. And these opportunities, these scenarios that, you find yourself in are mirrors. And so that held up a mirror to me and made me look at that relationship and decide that it was never a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I have gratitude for that, observation now, because it taught me that wasn't the right relationship for me. I had another friendship pop up over the past couple of months, and I wasn't looking for more friends. I was kind of actually tired of having to make friends, because again, I have nothing but like takers in my life. And this woman came along and without question just bailed me out of something that I didn't think I could get out of on my own, but I wasn't going to ask for help, because again, like history has shown me, I'm not going to get the help. And she dug deep and like bailed me out. And I thought, is this what like a real friendship looks like? This is really fascinating to me. I'm going to accept the help because I'm tired and I don't want to do it alone. And it was really nice. And I didn't go looking for it. Didn't have to ask for it. They saw that was, something I needed, and they just did it.
Wow.
I know, it was like, eureka.
Right. Yeah. Well, potentially, I mean, that's the hope, is like when you aren't invested, right? You talked about like how energy is an economy. So when you're preserving your energy from like strictly taking relationships, potentially you have like more room or space to be given to. Potentially, right? It's not like A causes B, but that's the hope.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So in your work as a coach, you do emphasize themes of self-love and self-care. How do you work with codependent clients who struggle with cultivating self-love and self-care and worry? These are like limiting beliefs, but sometimes they might think like it's selfish, others will disapprove, or they will be rejected in their relationships.
Well, sometimes I feel like I have to encourage them to, again, hold that mirror up. So they come to me because they haven't been putting themselves first. So how's that working out for you? Not well, I'm guessing, because that's why we're talking.
Right.
So let's try to shift that a little bit. I try very hard not to do these like massive shifts, right? Like some clients are strictly mindset coaching clients. Some are a combination of mindset and nutrition. So like, let's take the mindset and nutrition ones. They have weight to lose and they have these limiting beliefs and all kinds of stuff like that. First thing I do is I get their nutrition in order first. Pretty much because if you don't eat, you die. So like that is definitely a thing that we have to keep doing. So by getting your food in order, usually it takes about 2 weeks to just start to like physically, emotionally feel better. And that's because the lining of your small intestine sheds every 7 days. So once we start to get your gut health in check, your hormone production, your hormone absorption is more efficient. Sometimes certain hormones haven't been produced at all, right? Like, so things are starting to improve. So you just kind of like, I'm starting to feel better. This is really interesting. So for those looking for like a really quick fix that needs some sort of quick win to hang their hat on to prove this is working, nutrition's the greatest place to start. And then as they, get into it for a few weeks, they start to get a little curious, like, I think I want to join a gym. Let me try that. And so after those few weeks have passed, I'm like, yeah, let's try a little like physical fitness, kind of pull that into the equation, more so for the mental health. than weight loss.
Mm.
Because that's really what physical fitness is a mental health tool. And so after a while, that becomes routine, then I can start in on the mindset. But I don't do that until I feel like their nutrition and any kind of like fitness routine is kind of like on lock. Once they feel like they have that under control, I can start to kind of weave in some different techniques to kind of help them look at their limiting beliefs closer. But I definitely don't start with that in the beginning. I feel like that's too overwhelming. And they are always, because of the diet culture we all have grown up with, they're looking for that, 50-pound weight loss in the first 5 days, right? So like they're looking for a quick win. So that's why we start there.
And what if like nutrition's locked in? I love that physical fitness is a mental health tool. So they're working out for their mental health. And they do share some struggles with self-love and self-care, since it's so opposite to how they've interacted with themselves in the world.
Yeah. And just getting them to see, like, you come to me saying, I hate myself, or I don't love the skin that I'm in. I don't think I'm beautiful. By just slowly applying grace and positivity. And I tell them all the time, I will love all over you. We are not doing the shame game here. We're not doing the self-deprecation thing anymore. You're plenty capable of doing that on your own, right? Like, I can cut myself down better than anyone. So let's not do that anymore. It doesn't feel good. Let's try to make this a little bit more like fun and educational. And so by just having that approach, I feel like they almost give themselves the permission to make mistakes and slip up, but also the permission to just be. That maybe they don't have to accomplish any of this in a certain period of time, or be a certain size, or have a weight loss number. I always tell clients in the beginning, go ahead with your weight loss number. Sure, you want to lose 30 pounds. I let them hold on to that for the first couple of weeks, but I gently replace it with, I want to be the next jean size down or something. Or one of my goals when I was on my journey was, and I'm sure at least the women listeners can appreciate this, is when you sit down, I don't want to adjust my shirt, right? Because it always gathers like right at the belly. I don't want to adjust my shirt. That was my goal. Whatever number that equates to on the scale is perfect, but breaking that emotional connection to the scale. And when they start to break that and break the emotional connection to food, that self-love begins to, come in. And when they're done with me, they have established that firm foundation of self-love, where they can then start to explore what they believe, what they believe their potential is, but then very soon after that, they realize their potential is greater than that.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, Colleen. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And can you share about your free offering for the listeners?
Yes. So I believe we have the link in the show notes, but the offering that I'd love to share is Crush Limiting Beliefs. The SNAP method is included in that, and it walks you through how you can begin to identify these limiting beliefs, kind of encapsulate them, and then decide what it is you want to do with them. And so that is free to all of your listeners. And if there's ever anything I can do to help, my Instagram is the best way to get in touch with me, at the Colleen Greco. My name was misspelled when I was born, so it's COLEEN GRECO, just one L. And yeah, I would love and welcome the conversation.
I'm sure it's a great story in your family about your name. So
yeah, I'll help you with that. I was the youngest of 7. My mother was exhausted, and she simply misspelled it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Wow.
awesome.
Wow. All right. Well, I'll put a link to the freebie in the show notes and to a link to your Instagram. And again, thank you for being here, sharing your time with us.
Thank you.
Dear listener, thank you for listening. And I will see you next week. Take care.
Hey girl, it's Marissa again. I'm not like a regular podcaster, I'm a cool podcaster, right? Thank you for listening and staying till the end. You can find me on Instagram at Therapy with Marissa. Email me, marissa@codependummy.com. Check out codependummy.com for more information on the show. And baby girl, a subscribe, rating, and review would be much appreciated. Till next time, I want you to remember, if you are feeling unseen, I see you. If you are feeling unheard, I hear you. And if you think that you don't matter, know that you matter to me. I want you to go out there so you can stop playing small and start taking up space, you dummy. And now, the disclaimer. Girl, this is not therapy and I am not your therapist. This podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regards to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, publisher, or guests are rendering any legal, clinical, or other professional service. If you want or need a professional, please find one.